When 12-year-old Lyra walked into the Dubai Art Gala, carrying nothing but a worn canvas bag and her grandfather's paintbrushes, Sheikh Tariq Al-Mansour dismissed her as lost until she asked to enter his $1 million art challenge. What happened next would transform not only their lives, but revolutionize how the world thinks about art, perception, and the extraordinary gifts that bloom in darkness. The following story is inspired by real events and combines elements from multiple documented cases. Names, locations, and specific details have been changed to protect privacy. This narrative is intended to inspire and educate. The transformations depicted occurred over extended periods and involved professional guidance. If you or someone you know faces similar challenges, please seek appropriate professional support. The Dubai International Art Gala shimmered like a jewel box made of glass and gold. Crystal chandeliers the size of small cars hung from ceilings, inlaid with geometric Islamic patterns, their light dancing across white marble floors. The who's who of the global art world had gathered: collectors, critics, curators, all dressed in their finest champagne glasses, catching the evening light that poured through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Arabian Gulf. Sheikh Tariq Al-Mansour stood at the center of it all. His pristine white thobe fell in elegant folds to his ankles, and his gold-trimmed black bisht caught the light with every gesture. The white gutra on his head, secured by a black agal, framed a face accustomed to being obeyed. A Patek Philippe watch, worth more than most people's homes, gleamed on his wrist as he held court among his guests. $1 million, he announced to the gathered crowd, his voice carrying easily across the marble hall. That is what I will pay for the winning piece in tonight's challenge. $1 million for art that moves me. The assembled artists, professionals who had trained at the finest academies in Paris, New York, and London, nodded eagerly. They had come prepared with their finest materials, their most innovative techniques, their hunger to claim the legendary Al-Mansour Prize. No one noticed the small figure who slipped through the grand entrance doors. Lyra Okonkwo moved carefully, her free hand trailing lightly along the wall as she navigated the unfamiliar space. Her faded t-shirt hung loose on her thin frame, the fabric so worn that the original color was anyone's guess. Perhaps blue once, now a muted gray with visible marks that spoke of long days and longer nights. Her oversized pants, clearly hand-me-downs meant for someone twice her size, were held up by a piece of rope. Her sneakers had seen far better days, but she carried herself with quiet composure, her chin lifted, her steps purposeful, even as she navigated by sound and touch. In her other hand, she clutched a threadbare cloth bag that held everything she owned in the world, and everything that mattered. "Excuse me, miss." A security guard approached, his voice polite but firm. "This is a private event. I'm afraid you cannot—" "I'm here for the art challenge," Lyra said. Her voice was soft but steady, her sightless eyes looking past him, toward the sound of Sheikh Tariq's voice, echoing through the hall. The guard hesitated. "Miss, this competition is for, that is to say, for professional artists." Lyra smiled slightly. "Is there a rule against others participating?" The guard opened his mouth to respond, but Sheikh Tariq had already noticed the commotion. He strode over, his bisht flowing behind him, a bemused expression on his face. "What have we here?" He looked down at the small figure before him, the faded clothing, the marked fabric, the shoes that barely qualified as shoes. His lips curved into a smile. "I want to enter the challenge," Lyra said, turning toward his voice with uncanny accuracy. Sheikh Tariq laughed. The sound echoed off the marble walls, and several nearby guests chuckled along with him. Someone in the background raised a phone to record. "Little one, this challenge is for artists, real artists, with real training." He gestured broadly at the assembled professionals. "These people have studied for decades. They have mastered techniques you cannot imagine." "I can imagine quite a lot," Lyra said quietly. The Sheikh's smile widened. "Can you now? Tell me, girl, where did you train? Which academy shaped your tremendous talent?" "My grandfather taught me," Lyra said. "Before he passed, he taught me everything he knew about seeing." This drew more laughter from the crowd. Sheikh Tariq shook his head, the prayer beads in his left hand clicking softly as he gestured. "And what exactly do you plan to paint with?" He looked at her threadbare bag with theatrical skepticism. "Magic brushes?" Lyra reached into her bag and withdrew 3 brushes. They were old, ancient really, the handles worn smooth by decades of use, but something about them caught the light strangely, and Sheikh Tariq's smile faltered for just a moment. "My grandfather's brushes," Lyra said. "He was blind too, you know, for the last 20 years of his life, but he never stopped painting." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Sheikh Tariq's eyes narrowed. "This is absurd," he said. "You expect me to believe that a blind child can create art worth $1 million?" He laughed again, louder this time, and his entourage laughed with him. Men in expensive suits held up cameras and phones, recording the moment. Some laughed along with the sheikh. Others exchanged glances, sensing something shifting in the air. "Do you think Lyra should be given a chance? What would you do if you were in her position?" Drop your thoughts in the comments below. Sheikh Tariq Al-Mansour had built his fortune on instinct. He could spot a winning investment the way sharks smell blood in water. And something about this blind girl with her faded clothes and ancient brushes made his instincts prickle. "Very well," he said, spreading his hands magnanimously. The gold of his watch caught the light. "Why not? Let the child have her chance. When she fails, and she will fail, perhaps she will learn a valuable lesson about knowing one's place." More nervous laughter from the crowd. Someone in the back muttered something, but no one dared speak up. Sheikh Tariq gestured to his assistant. "Give her canvas. Give her paints. Let her try, if she wishes." Lyra was led to an easel at the far end of the hall. The canvas before her was blank and enormous, 6 feet by 4 feet, the same size given to every competitor. An array of premium paints waited nearby, colors she would have to select by touch and smell and memory. "You have 3 hours," Sheikh Tariq announced to all the competitors. "Begin." The professional artists set to work immediately. Their movements were confident, practiced, efficient. They sketched out lines, mixed custom colors, applied techniques learned in the finest schools. Their works began to take shape. Abstract expressions, hyper-realistic portraits, conceptual installations. Lyra stood motionless before her canvas. For 10 minutes, she simply listened. The scratch of brushes on canvas, the murmur of the crowd, the click of cameras, the distant sound of traffic far below, the hum of the air conditioning, the breathing of the woman standing 3 feet to her left. Then she reached into her bag and withdrew something unexpected, a small container of what looked like sand. She opened it raised it to her nose, and inhaled deeply. The sand had come from 3 different places: the beach where her grandfather had taught her to paint, the garden behind the Lagos hospital where he had passed, and the construction site where she had slept last night. 3 textures, 3 memories, 3 worlds contained in a handful of earth. Lyra began to paint. Her technique was unlike anything the crowd had ever seen. She didn't sketch first. She didn't seem to plan. She moved across the canvas like water, finding its path, her grandfather's brushes dancing in her hands. Sometimes she worked with her fingers directly, feeling the paint, building texture. She mixed colors by smell, the sharp bite of cadmium, the earthy richness of burnt umber, the sweetness of certain whites. She tested temperatures with the back of her hand, feeling where the canvas was wet and where it was dry. And she listened. Always she listened. "What is she doing?" someone whispered. "Performance art, perhaps," another suggested. "Some kind of statement." Sheikh Tariq watched from across the hall, his expression unreadable. The prayer beads in his hand had stopped moving. Dr. Amara Hassan, the gala's art director, approached him quietly. She had noticed what others had missed: the way Lyra's hands moved with absolute certainty, the way she never hesitated, never second-guessed. "Sheikh Tariq," she said softly, "I think you should look more closely." At what? A child playing with paint? At what she's creating. Sheikh Tariq made his way across the hall, his bisht swishing against the marble floor. The crowd parted before him, and when he reached Lyra's canvas and saw what was emerging there, he stopped breathing. The painting showed a garden. Not just any garden. His garden. The private sanctuary behind his Abu Dhabi estate that no photographer had ever captured, that existed in no public record. The fountain his mother had loved, the exact shape of the palm trees, the way the evening light fell across the tiles she had chosen herself before her passing. "How?" he whispered. Lyra continued painting, unhearing or uncaring of his shock. "How do you know this place?" he demanded. "Who told you about this?" "You did," Lyra said without pausing. "Just now, when you spoke, the catch in your voice when you mentioned your mother, the way your breathing changes when you think about home, the weight of what you carry in your consonants." She added another stroke to the canvas. "You carry this garden. Lyra's gift is extraordinary. Have you ever met someone with an unexpected ability that surprised you? Share your story in the comments." The remaining 2 hours passed in a kind of fever dream. Word spread through the gala like wildfire. People abandoned the other artists to cluster around Lyra's canvas, watching in stunned silence as she painted things she could not possibly know. She painted Sheikh Tariq's mother as a young woman, based solely on the timbre of love in his voice when someone mentioned her name. She painted the exact color of the sunset on the day his father passed, extracted from the specific quality of sorrow in his sigh. She painted the face of a child, his child, born too early and lost before her first breath, a secret he had never shared with anyone, captured in the hollow echo that appeared in his voice whenever someone mentioned nurseries or daughters. The painting was not one image, but many, layered and interwoven, a symphony of private sorrows and hidden joys made visible. It was a portrait not of a face, but of a soul. When the 3 hours ended and the other artists stepped back from their canvases, no one was looking at their work. Everyone was looking at the blind girl in the faded clothes, standing before a painting that had made Sheikh Tariq al-Mansour weep for the first time in 30 years. "How?" he asked again, but his voice was different now. The earlier tone was gone, replaced by something raw and wondering. "How can you do this?" Lyra set down her grandfather's brushes and turned toward him. Her sightless eyes seemed to look right through him. "When you lose one sense," she said, "the others don't just compensate. They transform. I don't see with my eyes, Sheikh Tariq. I see with everything else. I hear the colors in people's voices. I feel the shapes of their memories in the way they breathe. I taste their sorrows in the air around them." She reached out and touched the canvas gently. "My grandfather taught me that blindness is not darkness. It is a different kind of light. He taught me to paint what I perceive, not what is visible, but what is true." The hall was silent. Even the cameras had stopped clicking. Sheikh Tariq looked at the painting again, at his mother's garden, at his daughter's face, at the landscape of his own heart made manifest in oil and pigment. "It's not worth $1 million, he said finally. The crowd murmured. Some of the professional artists shifted, thinking justice was about to be served. "It's priceless," Sheikh Tariq continued, and his voice broke on the word. "It's absolutely priceless, and I have been a fool." He turned to face the crowd, his bisht swirling around him. The commanding presence was back, but tempered now with something gentler. "I laughed at this child," he said. "I questioned her appearance. I questioned her blindness as a limitation. I was wrong." He looked back at Lyra. "You have given me something tonight that money cannot buy. You have shown me myself, the parts I hide from everyone, the parts I sometimes hide from myself." He reached into his bisht and withdrew a checkbook, old-fashioned, leather-bound, the paper thick with the weight of generational wealth. $1 million, he said, writing quickly, "as promised, and—" He paused, thinking, "a full scholarship to any art academy in the world. But—" He capped his pen and looked at Lyra seriously. "I suspect you have more to teach than to learn." 6 months passed. The Al-Mansour Center for Perceptual Arts opened its doors in Dubai Design District on a bright February morning. The building was a masterpiece of accessible architecture, every surface textured for navigation, every space designed to be experienced through multiple senses. Lyra Okonkwo stood at the entrance, her hand resting on a bronze plaque that read, "In honor of Isaiah Okonkwo, who taught us that vision is not limited to eyes." She was still wearing simple clothes, by choice now, not necessity. The $1 million check had gone immediately into the foundation's endowment. The scholarship funds had established a program for artists with disabilities from underserved communities. Lyra kept nothing for herself except her grandfather's brushes and a small apartment near the center. "You could have new designer clothes," Sheikh Tariq had observed during the planning phase, watching her arrive at yet another meeting in simple jeans and a plain sweater. "I could," Lyra had agreed, "but these clothes remind me where I came from. They remind others where I came from. And they remind me that the next Lyra might walk through those doors wearing exactly what I wore that night." Sheikh Tariq had nodded slowly, understanding dawning in his eyes. "They're not a limitation anymore. They're a statement." "They're an invitation," Lyra corrected gently. "They say, you are welcome here exactly as you are." "What sense do you think you rely on most? What would happen if you tried to experience art or the world through a different sense? Tell us in the comments. Research shows that when one sense is impaired, the brain can remarkably redistribute resources to enhance remaining senses. Studies at MIT and Johns Hopkins have documented blind individuals developing enhanced auditory processing, spatial awareness, and tactile sensitivity. This neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself, means that what we perceive as disability often includes hidden extraordinary abilities waiting to be discovered and nurtured. The center had grown beyond anyone's expectations. What began as an art program had evolved into something more, a revolution in how the world understood perception, creativity, and human potential. Lyra's teaching methodology, developed with Dr. Amara Hassan and a team of neuroscientists, was being studied by universities worldwide. It wasn't just about teaching blind people to paint. It was about teaching everyone to perceive differently, to listen with their whole bodies, to feel colors, to taste emotions, to understand that human consciousness was vast and largely unexplored. Sheikh Tariq had become more than a benefactor. He had become a student. 3 times a week, he sat in Lyra's studio, a blindfold over his eyes, learning to experience the world the way she did. It had started as a publicity exercise, good for the Foundation's image, his advisors had said. But somewhere along the way, it had become something real. "I never knew," he said one evening, sitting in darkness, listening to the sound of wind through the Mashrabia screens. "I never knew how much I was missing." "You weren't missing anything," Lyra said. "You were just using one channel when you have dozens available. It's like—" She paused, searching for the right metaphor. "It's like you've been watching television with the sound off your whole life. The picture is beautiful, but you're only getting part of the story. And now? Now you're learning to hear the music." 2 years later, the Al-Mansour method, as it came to be known, was being implemented in schools across the Gulf states, Europe, and increasingly in North America. It wasn't just an art program. It was a new way of understanding human capability. Children who had been labeled with limitations discovered extraordinary gifts. A deaf boy from Sharjah became famous for paintings that captured the visual rhythms of music he could feel through vibration. A girl with severe autism, nonverbal and seemingly unreachable, produced sculptures so emotionally resonant that they moved visitors to tears. She was feeling and shaping what she could not express in words. And it worked in reverse, too. Sighted children learned to navigate blindfolded, developing spatial awareness and empathy that transformed their relationships. Hearing children learned sign language art, 3-dimensional storytelling that existed in movement and space. The impact went far beyond art. Businesses began consulting with the Center on accessibility and inclusive design. Medical schools incorporated perceptual training into their curricula. Technology companies hired graduates to help develop interfaces that engage multiple senses. Sheikh Tariq, once known primarily for his wealth and his harsh judgments, became famous for something different. His Foundation's work, yes, but also his personal transformation. Interviews showed a man who listened more than he spoke, who asked questions instead of making pronouncements, who had learned from a blind child in faded clothes that wisdom doesn't always come from expected sources. "What changed you?" a journalist asked him during a feature interview. He was silent for a long moment. A girl walked into my gala with nothing but some old brushes and simple clothes. I laughed at her. I questioned her in front of cameras. He looked directly at the journalist, and then she showed me my own soul on a canvas. She saw me more clearly in 3 hours than people with perfect vision had seen me in 50 years. He leaned forward. I thought I was giving her a chance to fail. Instead, she gave me a chance to see, really see, for the first time in my life. 3 years after that fateful night, the painting hung in the center of the Al Mansour Museum of Perceptual Arts, the original work from the gala. It had been offered for sale at auction once, reaching a final bid of $12 million before Lyra asked Sheikh Tariq to withdraw it. "It's not for sale," she had said. "It was never for sale. It's a doorway. People need to walk through it, not own it." Now the painting served as the centerpiece of the museum's main hall, surrounded by works from the center's students and faculty. Visitors came from around the world, not just to see it, but to experience it. Audio guides described it in poetic detail for the blind, while tactile reproductions allowed them to feel the texture and flow of the brushstrokes. Lyra rarely gave interviews anymore. She preferred teaching, preferring the quiet work of helping others discover their own hidden perceptions. But on the 3rd anniversary of the center's opening, she agreed to speak at the annual gala, held, as always, in the same Dubai hotel where she had first encountered Sheikh Tariq al-Mansour. The crowd that gathered was different from the one 3 years before. Artists with various differences mingled with collectors and critics. Children from the center's programs, some blind, some deaf, some with other ways of being, demonstrated their work alongside established masters. The air hummed with multiple languages and multiple ways of perceiving. Lyra took the stage in a simple outfit, modest, but no longer marked by hardship. Her grandfather's brushes, carefully preserved, sat in a case at the podium beside her. 3 years ago, she began, I walked into this room expecting nothing and hoping for everything. A man laughed at me. Many people laughed. They saw my clothes, my blindness, my circumstances, and they thought they knew what I was worth. She paused, her sightless eyes sweeping the room with uncanny accuracy. They were wrong, not because I proved myself better than them. That's not how worth works. They were wrong because human value cannot be measured by what we see on the surface. Every person in this room carries a universe inside them. Sorrows and joys, memories and dreams, colors that don't exist on any visible spectrum but burn bright in the darkness of our inner worlds. She reached out and touched her grandfather's brushes. My grandfather lost his sight at 40. He thought his life as an artist was over. Instead, he discovered that he had been painting with only half his soul. In darkness, he found a different light, and he spent the rest of his life teaching me to see it too. She turned toward where she could hear Sheikh Tariq's breathing, slightly faster than normal, touched with emotion. Sheikh Tariq al-Mansour laughed at me once. He questioned my worth. And that moment, that challenge, became the foundation of everything we've built. Not because challenge is good, but because even our difficult moments can become doorways if we let them. He walked through that door. He chose to see differently. He chose to become different. She smiled, a warm, genuine expression that transformed her face. That's what I've learned in 3 years. We are not defined by our first reactions. We are defined by what we do next, by whether we double down on our mistakes or open ourselves to transformation, by whether we see people as they appear or as they truly are. This journey has been extraordinary. What transformation has touched your life most deeply? Share your experience below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more stories that remind us what's possible when we truly see each other. 5 years after the gala, the Al Mansour method had become a global movement. Centers operated on 6 continents. The original painting had been reproduced in formats accessible to every sense: audio descriptions, tactile versions, even olfactory interpretations that captured the emotional essence of the work through carefully composed scents. Lyra Okonkwo, now 20, continued to teach and create. Her works hung in major museums worldwide, but she insisted on keeping her prices modest, on making her art accessible, on remembering always that she had once been a girl in simple clothing, with nothing but borrowed brushes and inherited wisdom. Sheikh Tariq al-Mansour had redirected the majority of his fortune toward the foundation's work. His children and grandchildren learned the perceptual arts alongside students from every background. The man who had once laughed at a blind child in faded clothes now spent his days learning from dozens of such children, his eyes often blindfolded, his heart perpetually opening. And in Dubai, in a small courtyard behind the center's main building, there was a garden. It looked exactly like the garden Lyra had painted that first night, the fountain Sheikh Tariq's mother had loved, the exact palm trees, the evening light falling just so across the tiles. He had built it as a gift, a physical manifestation of the invisible garden she had seen in his soul. On the wall beside the fountain, a plaque read, "For Lyra, who taught me that blindness is not darkness, but a different kind of light. And for my mother, who always knew that the most beautiful things are often invisible to the eye." Below it, a smaller inscription: "We do not see with our eyes alone. We see with everything we are."